Okay, so today's lesson is going to be about transcribing. So, transcribing is basically the art of taking a solo that you heard that you like and learning the notes by ear instead of reading it from a transcription book or from sheet music. And so you have to have a pretty good ear for intervals and you got to know your scales. So if you don't know um, your major scales or minor scales, all that good stuff, Dorian minor, it's going to be a little bit hard to do this, and you're going to have an ear for intervals. So you got to know like the difference between a third and a fifth and a fourth and a second and be able to hear where it is. Also having a good sense of where each note is on your instrument is going to help also. But those are the things you need to know. So right now I want to go over um, a Charlie Parker solo that's really good to start out with. Probably the best first transcription that somebody can do. It wasn't my first transcription, and I've actually never sat down and looked through this, although I know it. This is Billy's Bounce, Charlie Parker's tune. It's a blues, and it's slow, and he doesn't play anything super technical or super fast, and there's a lot of good bebop language in it that you can learn. So we're just going to go over the first chorus, and I want you guys to maybe play along, especially if you're an alto player. Go ahead and play along, and and I'm going to reveal a little bit of the transcription process because this is something that I've never actually went over myself. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, here we are at the solo section, which is about 0.54, 53 seconds, something like that. So, let's just hear the first phrase, the first 4 bars. Okay, so that would be the first phrase that I would focus on. That part where he does a little bit of a squeak there, because his reed probably isn't working very well. Let's hear it again. So the first thing I would do is I'd hear it a couple times and get it in my head. And so the next thing I would do is try to sing it as best as I could. Now, I didn't really, that's never really worked for me because I wasn't a very good singer and I have a pretty good ear anyway, so I didn't really feel like I need to do it except for stuff that's really, really hard. But for this, I don't need to, but you certainly should. So let's try to sing it. Try again. I'm not a very good singer, sorry. So I sang it twice. So now let's see if I can. Let me see if I can play it and see how accurate it is. So that's the first phrase. I listened to it twice, sang it twice, and then I played it, and it was pretty much accurate. The articulation wasn't quite there, I don't think, but the notes were there. And so if you want to get through the notes first, that's fine, and then get all the other stuff later. So let's go back and play one more time for good measure. So there's the second phrase. So let's hear the second phrase. This is a little bit more beboppy, a little bit more challenging. Da 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 da. So that one is probably just this. Again, having the good ear helps because, if you can get those really wide intervals and know where the range of your instrument is, that helps also. Okay. So after that first little bit, there's a little bit of chromaticism if you can hear it. The intervals get smaller get smaller right here. Da. See, there's a little bit of chromaticism there, so let's try to figure out that. But see, when I just figured that out, it's actually not exactly chromaticism, but it's just down the Mixolydian scale. Sounds about right. Okay, so I figured that one out. Figured out that it wasn't really chromaticism, it was just a bebop scale, and then it got chromatic later. So let's hear it one more time, and I'll try to point some of that out. Ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da, that's chromatic. And right there, he kind of strays from the bebop a little bit and plays just like a pretty common major 7 shape. So in the key, right, that one is 3, 5, 7, 6. So that's pretty common to end on that 6. So now that we've got the first 2 phrases, let's go ahead and try to put them together. See, I kind of messed up that first one, so let's go one more time. And you might have to do this a lot of times, but this is the process here. How to transcribe is you just play it over and over and over again until you get it. And it may take you one time, it may take you, I mean, that chunk might take you 2 hours, but that's a pretty productive 2 hours, I'd say. So now that you've got some of the notes in the first 2 phrases, let's maybe try to analyze a little bit of the style, like the articulation and the vibrato and like the inflection in it. So let's just go back to that first phrase. So the first phrase, he's kind of doing this common technique where it's kind of like ghost notes. Which are kind of notes that you finger and you sort of play, but they're very much lower in volume than the rest of them. So what I kind of hear him doing is something like this. So he's ghosting. That's pretty common of a thing to do. So how you would do that for saxophone anyway, I'm not sure for trumpet or trombone, but for saxophone, what you would do is actually you would do something called a half tongue, which is you put your tongue over the reed, but the reed is still vibrating. It kind of sounds like this. That's just on one note, but if you wanted to go from one note to another and ghost note, it would sound like this. So that takes a lot of practice, and you'll kind of squeak and make horrific sounds until you get it. But that's the idea, and that's basically what he's doing on all those ghost notes. So again, it sounds. Let me try to play the line again, and you can kind of hear where the ghost notes are. I don't think he actually ghosts that that concert A there, but let's find out. Yeah, no, he doesn't. He doesn't ghost that. So one more time. Go to the second phrase now. So there's more ghosting going on there. So let's play that. So he's ghosting the bottom D. So it kind of sounds like this. Let's keep going. So here are those chromatics right here. Or the, yeah. Ba-da-da. So he's kind of ghosting those last two, so that would be this. Then he's ghosting that last A there. So the whole line is this. So that's how that would go. And then basically you just do it for the whole rest of the solo. Let's just try to finish this chorus so that I can give you a little bit more of an idea of how to finish out the chorus. And also, obviously, you don't have to transcribe the whole entire solo if you don't want to. It's just, if you can just transcribe one line. If you like this line here, then just go ahead and transcribe that and leave it alone. You don't have to transcribe the whole thing. But I think transcribing whole solos is valuable because you also get to see the pattern, like the roadmap that the soloist takes, which is sometimes just as important as the notes they play is in what order do they play them in and what's the phrasing like. So let's just try to finish this chorus and then you guys can figure out the rest. And at the end of this video, I might also show you the transcription of this from the Omnibook that I have on Kindle. I'll show you that so that maybe you can get an idea for how right I was. But Let's hear it one more time. Another reason this solo is really, really cool is that he pretty much plays, like, he's pretty clear with the phrasing. He just plays one phrase and he stops, then he plays another phrase and he stops, and then he plays another phrase and he stops. And rather than just rambling on forever. And it's kind of easy for a person to pick up on all the phrases and chunk it out for yourself in a practice session. So let's try to transcribe that last phrase. So that first one is kind of like a run up to your our D. So I think it's this. Nope. I think that's it. You can hear his fingers kind of stumble a little bit right there, and so it's kind of hard to pick up what he's doing, but I think that's what it is. Let's hear it one more time. Right. Let's listen for some of the phrasing. So he's basically doing the same ghosting notes in the same place, but the one thing that's different is he does a little scoop on that last F sharp, concert A, right? F sharp, concert A. So he kind of, that last phrase I think is something like this. Instead of just going ba-da-da-da, he's going ba-da-da-ya. Let's hear it one more time in the recording. And he tongues it a little bit before that too. I just picked up on that. So it's like that. So now that we've pretty much got the whole phrase down, let's go back to the beginning of the solo and see if we can play the whole phrase. So there, it only took us, 15 minutes or so, and you got the whole first chorus of this blues here, which is actually not, it's actually a bebop blues, I think. So that's kind of the process that I would do, and maybe I'll make more of these videos kind of talking about, transcribing and just maybe making a bunch of these, just showing me doing it so that you guys can get a feel for how it's done. And maybe I can share some of the transcriptions I've done and analyze them a little bit. So, and right now I think I'm going to show you guys the Omnibook version of this solo so that you can get a feel for what the actual notes are for this first chorus. So now that we have the transcription here in front of us, let's take a look at how well we did this transcription. So here's the start of the solo right here. And as you can see, it goes up D, E, F, F sharp. So that was pretty much correct. And then here we have B, da, 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 da. See, here's that D, da, 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 da. There's the chromaticism. Da, 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 da. See, even though this is a D7, he uses the major 7 right there. Because later bird blueses would actually have all these 7th chords like this, and right here be major 7 chords. And here's this last phrase right here. I don't know why they just didn't put, well, I know why, but they should have just put that as a C sharp, because that makes more sense, because that's in the key rather than having it at D flat. But I know why they did it, because when you're notating stuff, usually sharp when notes are going up and flat when notes are going down is usually better, but I would have put that as a C sharp. See, there's that scoop right there. What they didn't do is they didn't obviously notate much of the articulation. They kind of leave that up to you. They didn't do any ghost notes, really. So, like right here, I kind of heard this as being 8th notes D and then down to B right here, and then just ghosting that. Same thing with here, F sharp and then go back to D and ghost note that. But it's so faint that they chose not to put it in the transcription, and that's why it's important to transcribe it yourself so that you pick up on these little nuances that if you're just reading this transcription book, you're not going to pick up on. So I'll leave this here. Maybe you guys could take a screenshot of this so you can practice. So I'll give you 5 seconds for this page, and then I'll go to the next page. Okay, there's the next page. And that is the last page of this transcription. Obviously, this would take a little work, but that would take a little bit of work. Let me try to play that just for fun, because I feel like I might be able to get it. Something like that. But obviously, that's going to take some work. But pretty much this isn't a really hard one. And so I would definitely recommend going and transcribing this whole thing. So, all right, thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.